Number 10. Infinity Wars. Infinity is a word you want to get familiar with when it comes to Marvel events. It comes up a lot. So does the word war, actually. Infinity Wars is not to be confused with Infinity War, which was a 1992 event that was already reinterpreted for the MCU. Infinity Wars is an event from 2018 where Gamora ends up gathering the Infinity Stones for her own purpose, becoming a villain, and taking up the name of Requiem. She ends up defeating Thanos and Adam Warlock using the stones, and also traps all of her universe in the Soul Gem, folding it in half and merging the souls of all its beings therefore together to create the pocket dimension known as Warp World. While Gamora goes on her own quest and other multiversal heroes attempt to stop her, in Warp World, Loki bands together his own team of heroes, setting on a mission to retrieve the Warp World version of the Infinity Stones so that they might save the world and defeat Devondra, a soul-devouring villain within the Soul Gem, who would feed basically on all their souls, if, you know, they didn't do anything about it. Eating people's souls. Number 9. Avengers vs. X-Men. Oh boy, I have a lot of feelings about this event. It's kind of complex, but ultimately though, the idea of Avengers and X-Men needing to duke it out over something, despite both being heroic groups who should in theory therefore be on the same side, it's tantalizing to me, that idea. There are some things about the way this event was executed that I'm not here for, but overall I think the premise is super interesting, and like Civil War, which came before it, I think the idea of heroes getting into a conflict with each other is quite compelling, especially with two groups that are, you know, as iconic as Avengers and X-Men when it comes to Marvel. In Avengers vs. X-Men, these two teams face off because the Phoenix Force is headed for Earth, specifically Hope Summers, the mutant messiah who is now all grown up, having been raised through time by Cable. The X-Men are willing to wait and see what happens, but the Avengers do not want Hope to become the Phoenix, and are vehemently anti-Phoenix. Iron Man is unable to destroy the Phoenix, and his attempt only succeeds in splitting the entity into 5 parts, which bond with other mutants and create the Phoenix 5. A bunch of crazy stuff happens, but in the end, Hope merges with the Phoenix and finds herself overwhelmed by power. Avengers Scarlet Witch and X-Men Hope Summers come together to banish the Phoenix Force in the end, seemingly destroying it. For a while, at least. You can't really ever get rid of the Phoenix Force, it always comes back. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you are loving the channel, please head on over to Facebook, where we also are, and give us a like and follow and do all the fun Facebook stuff. We've also lots of cool Facebooky things coming for you. In a good way, not coming for you in a bad way, just to be clear. Number 8. 10 of Swords. 10 of Swords was such a ridiculous and fun event. Oh my goodness, what a roller coaster. I loved this event. It was not quite what I expected it to be, and yet in other ways, it kinda was. X of Swords, pronounced 10 of Swords in relation to the tarot card, is a mutant event about a contest of champions that is held to settle a dispute between the mutants of Krakoa and the mutant and Amenthi of Araco. The two sides each have their own champions prophesied for them, with each needing to present the right prophesied matching blade in order to compete. So of course, going into this, you'd think it's going to be a dueling contest. It's definitely going to be a dueling contest, there's going to be lots of sword fights. But hey, it's so much more than that. They have contests of all kinds, and being that the White Witch, Opal Luna Saturnine of the Starlight Citadel, is in charge of it, it's just mainly a really weird and wild time that ends up in just a straight, all-out battle, which is also really epic. So yeah, what an experience. Also for that event, I read like almost everything leading up to it, so that was a fun event for me. I was really invested.
Coming in at number 7, we have She-Hulk, another Disney Plus miniseries. Bringing back Mark Ruffalo in the role of Bruce Banner and debuting Tatiana Maslany in the title role after a tremendous performance in the Canadian TV show Orphan Black, this show looks poised to introduce a second Gamma Green hero to the Avengers team. And given the fact that we haven't even gotten a standalone story with Mark Ruffalo as Hulk yet, we're hoping that this miniseries will finally give the MCU a good in-depth story about the struggle that the Hulk characters have in balancing their multiple lives. And with such talented actors leading the cast, that looks to be exactly what we're gonna get.
Number 6. Infinity. An event that holds a special place in my heart is Infinity. When it comes to modern events, it was one of the first ones that I read, and I read it because I was reading Captain Marvel at the time and I needed to know what happened next with Carol. So I kind of just fell into it and, didn't read a lot of the context for this event, and yet surprisingly came out the other side with a lot of love and appreciation for this event, despite not being deeply invested in all of those other titles. Infinity is where we see the Avengers and really all of Earth as well as the universe face certain doom. Dun dun dun, as per usual with most cosmic events, when they face off with the universe's oldest race, the Builders. The Builders are looking to basically wipe the universe clean, traveling around the cosmos and destroying various worlds. This isn't so much because they are intrinsically evil or anything, but because they claim they created the worlds and civilizations, and now it is their responsibility in a sense to destroy them and finish that cycle. Meanwhile, on Earth, our heroes believe that Thanos is attempting to once again unite the Infinity Gems, but it's revealed that he's really trying to locate his mysterious son, who we later know to be Thane, so that he can destroy Thane, which is also a big part of this event. Infinity leads into Time Runs Out, which leads into Secret Wars, and so it's also an intricate part of that bigger story. Number 5. The Alliance. The Kree and Skrulls have come together. I know, say what? Aren't they supposed to be sworn enemies? Yes they are. The Skrull and Kree have feuded on and off since what feels like forever, but this time they unite to take on a common enemy, the Celestial Messiah, also known as Sequoia or Koya, and his allies, the Kotati. Empire Fantastic Four issue 0 also served to remind us that the Kree/Skrull war had also obviously previously ended, and now as such Skrull and Kree have come to Earth and Earth's moon, where this feud started years ago, in order to defeat their enemies. Earth somehow seems to always be the center of honestly almost every cosmic war or disaster. 'Cause comics. Number 4. House of M. House of M is another great event, one that dramatically changed the world, which is actually kind of rare for events, although a lot of them, claim to change the entire world or the narrative of comics for years to come. Most events don't actually live up to that claim very much. House of M did though. In this story, Wanda Maximoff, aka the Scarlet Witch, suffers a mental break after her children are taken from her, and she learns of how that was basically all covered up. Yeah, not a great look. Feeling isolated and alone, Scarlet Witch creates an alternate world where she attempts to make many prominent friends, allies, and heroes happy by giving them what she believes they want. However, when it is revealed that this world is not real but was created by Wanda, the heroes choose to rebel against her. Disappointed by everyone's reaction and frustrated beyond belief that people still see her as a danger and a monster despite her intent here, Scarlet Witch utters 3 devastating words: no more mutants. Yeah, that's what you get, Magneto. That's what you get. Being so awful, and she's like, I tried to give you everything and you're still not happy with me. Jeez.
Coming in at number 3, we have Moon Knight. For years, Oscar Isaac was one of the biggest fan picks to play the role of Mark Spector if there was ever a Moon Knight MCU project, and next year, that's finally becoming a reality. While we've only gotten to see a brief teaser trailer so far, this Disney Plus series looks to be bringing the dark and mystical drama that people love about Moon Knight in the first place, alongside a killer performance by Oscar Isaac as the multiple personality possessing superhero. This looks like it could be a great introductory performance for a character that we can't wait to see bouncing off of other sarcastic characters in the MCU. Plus, Oscar Isaac being pretty hot really helps.
Number 2. Hellfire Gala. I mean, you know how much I love some fancy nerd fashion, and I also just love the elegance and drama that is this very mutant-based event. Now granted, to have the Hellfire Gala, we're going to, need mutants in the MCU, but we know at some point that is coming to us. The question is just, when? When is that coming? Hopefully soon. Hellfire Gala is a new seemingly yearly event which varies in scale. Last year it spanned all mutant books pretty much, and saw the mutants open up the island of Krakoa to welcome dignitaries, celebrities, heroes, and villains from the world and galaxy all over to visit and, well, basically just kind of show off. The Hellfire Gala is hosted mainly by Emma Frost, one of the heads of the Hellfire Trading Company. This year it will be opened up even more, with non-mutant superhumans also getting in on the red carpet / fashion aspect of the event, attending in outfits that highlight their iconic look, but that also slay at the same time. Very important. Number 1. DC vs. Marvel. I think I can confidently say that this is an event we'd all love to see take flight. I know this because every time we talk about Amalgam comics or Amalgam characters, there is just so much love, support, and celebration amongst you, our Nerd Squad community, in the comments. That's right, I keep an eye on the comments every now and then. I'm there, I'm just watching. And I love Amalgam too. I love how fun it is, I love the idea of these two similar but seemingly opposing worlds coming together to duke it out, only to realize that they actually maybe they need to actually band together. Maybe they're both cool. Maybe they can just shake hands at the end. The premise for the event was that two cosmic entities that represented each respective universe decided to challenge each other to find out which universe was better. They would create challenges for each world's champions to test both sides, and whichever one came out on top would get to remain, while the other world would be eliminated, ceasing to exist thereafter. Number 10. Who is the Beyond Corporation? The Beyond Corporation, to expand on them and introduce them to you a little bit more, is basically the mastermind behind this whole operation. They seem to be wanting to turn the role of Spider-Man into a corporate gig. They managed to get their hands on the Spider-Man name and trademark, and as a result have selected Ben Reilly to act as their own Spider-Man. Instead of approaching the Spider-Man, Peter Parker, or also the Spider-Man, Miles Morales. Why? Well, we might get into the layers of that a little bit later, but Beyond basically tells Ben that they chose him because he has a strong will, and that's what they're looking for, someone who can basically get things done. They give Ben a swanky apartment, a whole team of comms to help him in the field, and super advanced tech to assist him in his heroics. They also send him out on missions, both to help and save the public, and to help and save Beyond at times. Also, honestly, if you want to be introduced to Beyond before jumping into issue 75 of Amazing Spider-Man, where this story begins, you can check out the final story in issue 74 of ASM, the final issue of the previous run. And why not flip back a page before you jump into the final story? There's a really fantastic Spider-Man recap for you to enjoy. It's really great. I loved it. I want to frame it somewhere. It's so cute. Number 9. Dreams. Something that I think is important to note when it comes to this story is the weird recurring dreams that seem to be showing up consistently, and the possibility that Peter Parker and Ben Reilly are sharing these same dreams. The recurring one that we keep coming back to in terms of themes and just what actually happens in the dream involves Uncle Ben. This is a particularly important moment in the story as it starts the whole thing off in issue number 75 of the Amazing Spider-Man series. At first it seems as though Peter is talking about a dream he is having, but later we see that Ben seems to be plagued with the exact same dream, featuring a faceless Uncle Ben Parker. Usually lengthy stories like this start off with something that sets the stage for the themes and often hint at what will be built up, where the story is moving towards. The dream thematically seems to deal with acknowledging who you are, confronting that, embracing that, and ultimately it deals with legacy, something that both Ben and Peter seem to be struggling with at the time. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to hear more about Spider-Man Beyond, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. I got a lot more facts to throw at you. There's a lot going on in this story. Number 8. Ben is back. Ben is back, baby, but what does this mean for his character? Where is he coming from? Where did we last see him? These are all great questions. Let me try to answer some of them for you by giving you the full picture. Last we saw Ben, he was fighting to redeem himself after becoming a villain and taking up the mantle of Jackal. As Jackal, Ben was working to do what he thought was right by bringing back a bunch of dead folks as clones and trying to perfect the cloning process. This would help not just him, but a ton of other folks returned as clones. Of course, he kinda ended up creating a solution which allowed him to exert control over said clones. As Peter saw it, Jackal Ben had things kinda twisted. What he saw was all the power with none of the responsibility. In the end, Peter defeated Ben, refusing to join him, and Ben realized the error of his ways and fought to atone for his mistakes. At one point, he had his sins completely cleansed, as they were explained as happening because of basically a corruption of his psyche. Now he's back, but he doesn't seem to be too much worse the wear, considering all that happened more recently in his past. In fact, his time as Jackal remains kind of untouched for much of this story, although Ben does seem to be struggling emotionally. Number 7. Forge MultiTasks. I love Forge so much. And I love this new X-Men team we've gotten out of the last election at the Hellfire Gala. It is so awesome. It's just like the more I think about this team, the more I'm like, this is actually like a really cool team. This is the moment that has me itching to read more of this team together though, despite the fact that I believe, sadly, Jerry Dugan is actually going to be leaving this book. In issue number 13 of the X-Men, which is still written by Dugan at this point, we get a look into how the Eternals attacked Krakoa and attempted to defeat the mutant island. The Eternals sick giant kaiju-like beings on Krakoa, also Eternals themselves. These giant Eternals are known as the Hex, that's the name of their subgroup. The Hex attack Krakoa, and Forge is not even intimidated into donning battle armor in response. That's just so Forge. Instead, he brings out the big guns and he waits for the right moment to strike while lounging in tropical attire and sipping a drink out of a pineapple. It's a fantastic moment that feels super Forge. Forge successfully takes out one of the giant Eternals that looks like a dragon. Unfortunately, he does only have one magic nanite bullet, and you know, that was it. So the X-Men are gonna have to figure out what to do about the rest of the army of Hex who are still headed towards the island. Number 6. Beyond's true motives. So, why does Beyond really want Ben Reilly as their Spider-Man? And do they really just want to make the world a better place, or do they have ulterior motives? How do they make money? And what's really going on in the scientific and experimental sandwich department? Those poor sandwiches! Someone free them, please. As time goes on, Beyond becomes more and more suspicious, and not just to you or I, the readers. I mean, I think we're all suspicious from the beginning, right? But also for Ben and Dr. Octopus. After Doc Ock's team up with Aunt May, he's hot on the trail of Beyond, who he believes has stolen his work. Ben is sent after Otto to apprehend him after he gets his hand on a very valuable asset of Beyond's, a drive with sensitive and pertinent information, which Beyond refuses to fill Ben in about when it comes to what the contents of this drive are. Ben manages to defeat Doc Ock, but Otto gives him a choice. He has made it so that Ben can actually access the drive's files without Beyond knowing. Ben can either look at the drive or simply return it without taking a peek at all. Of course, Ben is already suspicious at this point, so he chooses to look. He does not like what he finds. It turns out Ben wasn't chosen for his strong will, just the opposite actually. He was chosen because Beyond considers him malleable, due to him being psychologically compromised. Number 5. Vigilantism Outlawed. Despite the fact that Daredevil made Fisk promise to stop his pursuit of vigilantes, Wilson instead has continued on that path, but decided to outlaw only those who refuse to join up with the government. In other words, if you are a supervillain or a superhero who is a willing ally yourself with the city of New York and with Mayor Fisk, you are pretty much fine. But if you decide that joining up with a villain like Kingpin is not something you're interested in, you are considered an outlaw by the mayor, government, and law enforcement. Number 4. Miles gets served. And I don't mean he gets served some like delicious hamburgers or anything tasty like that. I mean he gets served in the legal sense. Miles Morales has also some Beyond tie-ins you'll be happy to hear, and to find out what's going on with him in the Beyond storyline, you can check out his own series from issues 33 to 36. Miles also makes an appearance in issue 81 of ASM, where he and Ben duke it out before teaming up to take on monster/villain Rhizome. However, while Ben ultimately decides not to tell Miles he should consider changing his name after Beyond told him to, because Beyond only wants Ben to use the Spider-Man mantle, and well, I mean, they do own it. Miles does later on get served by Beyond, unfortunately, as we find out in his own series. And that is a whole thing that he has to deal with in his own series, on top of dealing with other hero-related problems. It's a lot going on for Miles right now. He just had his own clone saga, and yeah, it's pretty crazy. Number 3. Heartless Magneto. Magneto was killed during the events of X-Men Red issue number 5. He puts up a good fight, but in the end, Uranos wins, getting him right in the heart. But here's the thing about Arakko. As we learn in that issue, you should always confirm the kill when you're dealing with anybody from Arakko. These are hard mutants cut from a different cloth, and so it is no surprise that, other than Iska, a few people are going to survive the brutality of this, especially as Uranos only has a limited time on the planet and foolishly does not confirm each and every kill, which, you know, he probably should have done that. A few do survive, including Xylo and Lotus Logos of the Great Ring, and of course, Magneto. Magneto may have been punched through the heart and no longer have one, but he has his powers and iron in his blood, and that is enough for him to basically will his blood to keep moving through his body, using the iron to kind of create, I don't know, like it's just like a glowing orb, but to me I kind of think of it as like an engine that'll replace his heart. Of course, he'd probably have to keep thinking about it because he'd be using his power to move the blood. Magneto is just always being a badass is basically the moral of the story, and it's so cool. It's so cool to read. Number 2. Black Cat and Mary Jane team up. Black Cat Cat and Mary Jane need to team up to go on a heist? Black Cat and Mary Jane is a team up we've been waiting for a long time, and while these two often do not get along, I personally am here for the day when Felicia and MJ can just like be friends instead of just fighting over Peter all the time. Maybe this team up is a step in that direction, maybe not, but it sure is a fun one. If you need more reasons to read Beyond, this is one of them. Bam! Read this issue and enjoy the team up of these two. Remember, this is an event where all the tie-ins are relevant. Peter's life may even hang in the balance, but you'll have to read it to find out. Number 1. The Unraveling of Ben Reilly. Remember how I said that Ben's time as Jackal seems to be mainly untouched? Well, later on in this story we find out kinda why that is. In issue 86 of ASM, we learn that Ben actually allowed Beyond to wipe his memory of his time as Jackal, which is why he didn't really know that his therapist, Dr. Kafka, was actually a clone, one he himself created. Yeah, Kafka had actually been working to try and rebuild Ben's framework when it comes to his mind, because the whole mind wipe thing is kind of ill-advised in her professional opinion. It's dangerous as it could cause Ben's personality to collapse because he's a clone. And well, I think you know where we're going with this revelation. After Ben learns more about Beyond's motives and begins to question who and what he's really working for and why, they decide it best if they remove recent memories to protect themselves from Ben's suspicions, and to protect Ben, I guess, so that he can keep working for them. And yeah, it doesn't go well. Memories beyond what they are scrubbing seem to unravel and disappear. What will Ben be like when he comes to? I really think you should jump into this story with us. Number 10. Masked Raider. You may have noticed a mysterious figure pop up in this event near the beginning. The Masked Raider. We don't know yet if this is the same Masked Raider that we were first introduced to though. Probably not, unless he was resurrected, as the original Masked Raider was Jim Gardley, a cattle rancher equipped with the Eternity Mask who first appeared in Marvel Comics issue 1 in 1939, and he has since died. He got shot a bunch. The Eternity Mask grants whoever wields it enough power to allow them to equal those they come up against. The Masked Raider appeared right at the beginning of the ramp up of this event, tied into a murder mystery needing to be solved, which sets up some of the exposition for Empire in incoming issue number 1. It has also been teased that we'll be getting a new Masked Raider title in 2020. The true identity of this Masked Raider remains unknown thus far, but what we do know is a man named Jerome Hamilton, possibly a reference to Vigilante Blind Justice, most likely this is Blind Justice who we're talking about, was the one responsible for giving this version of the character the Eternity Mask. Unless there's another Jerome Hamilton just wandering around, which there could be. Who knows? Could be a common name on Earth. Number 9. Null. Empire really is an event that was ambitious. Due to the global pandemic, some of the tie-ins have had to be cancelled, but originally this event was going to be one of the biggest yet, and even with the cancellations, it's still huge. Almost everyone is involved in this event, including the weird god of the symbiotes from space, Null. It seems that Null is declaring a space war of his own. Having been awakened following the events of Absolute Carnage, he is rampaging across the galaxy currently with an army of symbiotic dragons that used to be one entity known as the sentient symbiotic planet known as Clintar. However, he himself is also likely to have some kind of interaction with at least one member of the Kree at some point, as he is being hunted by Wraith, an Exolon-infected Kree assassin named Zach Dell. Number 8. Conflict with Atlantis. Another thing that you might want to understand if you haven't been as involved or up to speed with the Avengers lately and what's been going on with Namor and Atlantis is that right now the people of the sea and the people of the land aren't really getting along so well. The feud is one that started and has kind of continued and been on and off since 2018, when Namor blamed the surface for the death of young Atlanteans who had run away and suffocated on the surface world, with no humans offering to help them. How rude. They died, those poor young Atlanteans. And Namor decided he'd had it. He declared war. And since then, things have been rocky between the Avengers and Atlantis. And just between Atlantis and the surface world even. The Earth being as divided as it is right now could prove for some challenging times ahead when all the galactic threats that we're expecting finally arrive. Because you know, you kind of want to be unified for that stuff. Number 7. King in Black. King in Black was an epic event years in the making. Leading up to it, we also had another exhilarating event, Absolute Carnage. The premise for King in Black was that Null had finally awoken and was on his way to Earth. King in Black was about the short but building tension as the heroes of Earth awaited Null's arrival, and then what finally happened when he did arrive to Earth. Mainly, I think many of us want to see this event because we want to see Null, god of symbiotes, and all his symbiote dragons, which are also super cool and powerful. Number 6. Killer Trees. What if I just left it there and I was like, that's all you need to know. There's killer trees. No, I'll explain it to you. Sorry about that. You may have noticed some trees sprouting up inside people and killing them. What are these trees? Where did they come from? We later find out that these trees are part of the reason that Skrull and Kree are joining together to attack Earth, as these killer trees are actually connected to the Kotati. The Kotati are a sentient and secretive tree people. They are from Hala and actually evolved alongside the Kree. While Kree are aggressive and focused on domination, Kotati are normally a peaceful people. Years ago, the Skrull arrived on Hala and offered a technology exchange, or really a gift of technology, as the Skrull have pretty much always been pretty technologically advanced. To see which race was more worthy of their technology, they had a competition. 17 members from each race were placed on the blue area of the moon and forced into a competition to see who could advance more quickly. This would end up leading to a feud between the Kree and Kotati, and later the Skrull and the Kotati, which would end up causing the Kotati to become somewhat aggressive, believing that they had suffered many injustices at the hands of both of these races. Which, to be fair, it kinda sounds like they have. In Empire Avengers issue number 0, we discover that the Kotati are plotting to seek revenge on the Kree and Skrull empires, but also potentially seek to exterminate all animal life as well, including all life on Earth. What?
Coming in at number 5, we have Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. While talking about this film will always have a tinge of sadness to it following the tragic passing away of Black Panther star Chadwick Boseman in 2020, this sequel to one of Marvel's biggest hits has promised to honor Boseman's legacy as T'Challa without recasting him or replacing him with special effects. With much of the cast of the first movie returning and the focus placed on the other heroes of Wakanda such as Okoye and Shuri, we can rest assured that this movie will have just as much love and care put into it as the first film, perhaps even more so out of respect to T'Challa's legacy.
Number 4, hammers. Okay, so this might not be as needed to know as some of the other points here, but it's really cool, and it's the cool stuff that helps get people interested in events, so I thought it was important that I share it with you. Hammers are becoming a thing again in Empire issue 1, and while yes, we've seen other heroes wield them like Thor and Ronan, and then there was the Fear Itself event where lots of people were wielding hammers, good and bad. This time around, we get one new really cool one. This hammer is gifted to SheHulk by the Kotati and allows SheHulk to literally channel her rage through her hammer so that she can be herself and focus once more. So once again, we get the brilliance that is Jennifer Walters combined with the strength and power that is Hulk. Yes! Number 3, Secret Wars. 2015 Secret Wars is another event we need to have in the MCU, especially with the implications we have in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I don't even know how you write events like this into the comics anymore, because any hints you drop as a screenwriter have to be like massive implications. At least that's how fans are going to interpret it as to what's going to come next. So you must need someone like Feige either tweaking after the fact when it comes to scripts, or you must be going into it with the idea communicated to you before, like what's going to be happening and coming up, so you have to like somehow write that into your script. I don't know. We learn in Multiverse of Madness that incursions are something that could be headed our way and are a huge threat. When it comes to Secret Wars, that's what this event basically spins out of. And time runs out, the incursions ended up happening despite everyone's attempts to stop them. However, Doctor Doom stepped up to the plate, utilizing the powers of Molecule Man and his own confidence and ego to save the world by creating his own battle world, a patchwork version of all the realities in the multiverse that combined together. In the end, Reed Richards would take the power of Molecule Man from Doctor Doom to undo his handiwork and return the multiverse to relative normalcy instead. But it was quite a wild ride. That whole event is pretty bonkers. I'm here for it if we get it. Number 2, the Celestial Messiah. So who is the Celestial Messiah anyway? Sequoia has only made a few brief appearances, so most of us likely didn't recognize him when he was mentioned in Empire Avengers issue number 0. But despite the fact that he has only appeared just over a dozen times in the comics since his introduction and later full appearance in the 80s, first in Silver Surfer and later in Fantastic Four, Koya is prophesied to be the bearer of great change in the universe. A Kotati prophecy predicted the coming of a celestial messiah who will grow to have great power and sway over the universe, and be born of a perfect male member of the Kotati and their perfect mate. In this case, it is revealed that the perfect female mate turns out to be Mantis of Guardians of the Galaxy, who agreed to take part in the prophecy and become the bearer of the celestial messiah, taking up her role in the prophecy as the celestial Madonna. Since being born, Sequoia grew and developed various superpowers, even managing to connect and tap into the power cosmic as he grew older. Number 1. Division of Heroes? While the Kree and Skrull are uniting and coming together, they need someone to lead this hybrid army. For the role of ruler and leader of their assault, they ended up choosing Avenger member Hulkling, aka Teddy Altman, who happens to be the son of a Kree warrior, the famous and original Captain Marvel, and the Skrull Princess Anel. What does this mean? It is possible that Teddy also being on Earth and being raised there could lead to either more division amongst Earth's heroes, or even more division internally within the Skrull and Kree alliance. Of course, this could also seek to unite all three factions together, but then again, the Avengers seem to be pretty close with the Kotati right now. Only time will tell how having Hulkling assume the role of ruler and taking back his Skrull name of Prince Dorek VIII will affect what happens in the story and crossover event as it unfolds. Number 10. Mike Murdock. Mike Murdock used to simply be a disguise that Matt would use whenever he needed to go undercover. Mike was essentially Matt pretending to be his long-lost twin brother, Mike. His twin brother who wasn't blind, but did happen to look just like Matt. This was a guise that Matt would slip in and out of for years whenever it was useful or convenient for him to do so. However, recently in the comics, Mike was actually given a full life of his own when the Inhuman Reader accidentally used his powers to bring Mike to life. For real, allowing him to exist separate from Matt, believing he was in fact Matt Murdock's brother. Long-lost twin brother. Reader described Mike as a fragment and initially sought to erase Mike's existence. In fact, Matt himself also attempted to do so as well, but in the end decided against it and chose to let Mike go after backing him into a corner, unable to get rid of the fragment who had become essentially Matt's real-life twin brother. I mean, when you have a twin brother, why let that go? Just let it be a thing. Mike appears in Devil's Reign, and it is important to be aware that he is now a separate entity from Matt, one who also allied himself with Fisk in the past for protection, and is good friends with Butch, who is believed to be Fisk's illegitimate son and is currently the new Kingpin of New York. Number 9. Elektra as Daredevil. More recently in the comics, Elektra has actually become Daredevil as well. This all went down as Matt Murdock was preparing to go to prison. To keep Hell's Kitchen safe, he'd set up a plan where Tony Stark could bid to buy the borough of New York. This plan, however, didn't go exactly as he'd hoped, when instead Elektra decided to outbid Stark for the area. Despite the fact that she had recently remembered Daredevil's true identity and had an argument with Matt about him surrendering himself and going to prison, Elektra offered to be the one to protect Hell's Kitchen, while Matt did what he felt he must do. After Matt went to prison, Elektra took up the mantle of Daredevil. So in case you were wondering why there are two Daredevils and why Elektra was DD as well, here's your answer. And something important to note going into this series is that there is Matt Murdock DD and Elektra DD, so two Daredevils. And friends, before I move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists about Devil's Reign, it is still ongoing and there's lots still to talk about, so be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Mayor Fisk. In case you weren't aware, Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin, is now mayor, and has been for a little while in the comics. He ended up being elected as the mayor of New York in part by winning over the masses, but mainly by fixing the vote to ensure his victory. He promised the people of New York that he would outlaw vigilantism and fight to bring self-titled heroes like the Punisher and even soups like Spider-Man to justice. Daredevil pretended to join Fisk, but intended to use his position to betray Wilson and capture him, banding together with fellow heroes to take him down. However, this plan didn't go quite according to plan. Fisk was expecting such a thing to happen and instead had the heroes arrested. For a time he was in a coma and Matt Murdock took over as mayor, but once Fisk recovered, he took back the title title and the responsibilities of the office. And Wilson Fisk also has designs on another, even bigger government role and office for himself, which you'll find out about in this event. Number 7. The hottest couple returns. Aunt May and Doc Ock, of course. Oh, did you think I was going to say like Spider-Man and Black Cat? No. That isn't a thing currently. But Aunt May and Doc Ock do get a pretty steamy and fun team up in issue 80 Point Bay. What, you don't believe me that they're the hottest couple in comics? Pfft, please, it says it right on the cover. Covers never lie to us, right? Right? This team up involves Aunt May and Doc Ock getting together to help save Peter's life, with May calling in a favor. Also, I love ruthless and determined Aunt May in this whole plot point. Aunt May is kind of a badass here. This tie-in, by the way, is important to the plot. All of them kind of are for Beyond. So if you're wanting to join us on this roller coaster of a ride, make sure you read the tie-ins and all the Point Bays. I like to call them Point Bays, but B is also an acceptable pronunciation in my books, considering it's short for Beyond, so B. I just like saying Point Bay. Number 6. Typhoid Mary Fisk. A while back, Wilson Fisk was attempting to use newfound power to bring back his beloved Vanessa, but was dissuaded from this plan when he was forced to consider if his wife Vanessa would have actually wanted to be brought back. And I mean, let's say she did. Would she even want to see Fisk, let alone be with him? As a result of this revelation, Fisk attempted to resurrect his and Vanessa's son Richard instead. This didn't work out as he planned, but the good news is that he found a way to move forward with his love life. The fact that Daredevil's identity was also wiped clean from his mind and his personal files likely also helped this love connection to grow. That is right, Fisk ended up partnering up romantically with his longtime right-hand woman and partner in crime, Typhoid Mary. The two of them even got married and now are partners in every sense of the word. The only problem is that Mary's trauma, or perhaps something else, seems to be blocking out some of the memories of their romantic past. Number 5. The 5 are broken. Wow, I didn't even intend to put the 5 at 5, but here we are. When Krakoa is attacked, Jack of Knives is also deployed to kill as many as he can and of course get the 5, who Prime Eternal Druig knows about from his alliance with Orcus. The shocking part is that they actually succeed in this. Egg falls and is unable to be protected during this attack. The good news is Egg had made some extra eggs before he died, meaning that the 5, even without one of their key members, was able to actually bring him back to life, thank goodness. But for a moment, the 5 were broken, and for a few moments upon reading Judgment Day issue number 1, you likely were like me and you lived in fear that the resurrection days of Krakoa were over. It was a really close one there for a second. Number 4. Kingpins Thunderbolts. Something we actually also saw happening during the King in Black event was Kingpin pulling together his own team of Thunderbolts after acquiring the team name. His version of the Thunderbolts, like many other iterations of the team, features supervillains who are acting as heroes. Kind of. Of course, in this case, they are supervillains who are acting as heroes on behalf of Kingpin himself, a major supervillain in the comics. So take that with a grain of salt. But all in all, it's pretty interesting. This isn't Hawkeye's Thunderbolts team. The Thunderbolts here are also working with the police of New York City in an attempt to keep order and to take down any illegal vigilantes who are out on the streets. Kingpin's Thunderbolts team, since it was first brought together, has included Rhino, Taskmaster, Star, Mr. Fear, Bartrock the Leaper, Snakehead, Ampere, Manbull, Fool Killer, Mr. Hyde, Grizzly, Figment, US Agent, Shocker, Dr. Octopus, Electro, and Agony. Many teammates have also died during their time serving on Kingpin's Thunderbolts, so he doesn't have a great track record for keeping people alive right now. And hence why there's been so many of them. They come on, they die, he's like, let me get somebody else. Number 3. Queen Goblin. Queen Goblin is a new character who was introduced in ASM issue 88. But who is behind the mask? If it wasn't spoiled for you in the solicits, this is a revelation that may just rock the entire Beyond event. Still, I'm not gonna spoil this one for you. I also talked about Queen Goblin on my top 10 goblins list if you want to learn more about the design and the idea for her character, but without any spoilers still. But I will say that her identity could be something that will shake the Beyond Corporation to its very core. So definitely a character appearance that you won't want to miss, and you'll probably be very interested in what she's up to. Number 2. Purple Man. So how is Kingpin managing to get all the people of New York to stand with him, considering how wild everything is getting, and how he's attempting to take on some of the most beloved superheroes of New York? Well, he has more than a few tricks up his sleeve when it comes to his control over New York City. One very powerful one is the Purple Man, aka Zebediah Killgrave, who despite seemingly dropping dead in issue 17 of the 2016 Jessica Jones series in a final moment of atonement, is actually still alive. I know. He's got a really powerful healing factor, and it turned out that one of his purple children actually manipulated Captain Marvel into merely thinking she had thrown his corpse up into the sun so that he could use his father's corpse for his own means. This inevitably ended up leading to Purple Man escaping, ending up back in prison at the Raft, and then ultimately falling into the hands of Mayor Wilson Fisk, who used Kilgrave's influence for his own means. Number 1. The Avengers mayoral candidate. Wilson Fisk and Matt Murdock haven't been the only ones seemingly showing an interest in politics and acting as mayor of New York, or at least aiming to become mayor of New York perhaps. The Avengers also have their own plan when it comes to beating Mayor Fisk. They want to nominate their own eligible candidate to become mayor of New York. Initially, Iron Man's plan was to run for mayor as billionaire Tony Stark, but fortunately they came up with something even better. Their current pick for candidate just so happens to be fan favorite street level hero Luke Cage. You know, I also want to see Luke Cage as mayor of New York, so I'm really hoping that this plan works. That sounds like an awesome story in and of itself that I would definitely want to read. They're going to have their work cut out for them, unfortunately, when it comes to fighting against Fisk, who, as we said, is using Purple Man's influence to bend the city to his own will, and important people around him to his own will. But I think nominating Cage for mayor is a very solid plan, so long as they can find a way to get New York somewhat unbrainwashed and back to normal. Hopefully. They're gonna have to probably take a lot of stuff away from Fisk before this will be possible, but I believe in Luke Cage as mayor.
Coming in at number 10, we're starting off with Morbius, a movie that's technically a Sony production and not from Marvel Studios, but still appears to be somewhat MCU related regardless. Portrayed by Jared Leto, Morbius is set to tell the story of Dr. Michael Morbius, a scientist suffering from a rare blood disease who finds himself afflicted with a form of vampirism after he attempts to cure himself and becoming a violent anti-hero in the process. Although we only have a couple of trailers to go by at the moment, it seems like this movie will have some connections to the Spider-Man side of the MCU, with Michael Keaton's Vulture showing up and even some Spider-Man graffiti that seems to imply that this movie might just wind up being important for the Marvel multiverse that Peter Parker seems set to blow wide open in No Way Home. Speaking of a Spider-Man themed multiverse, coming in at number 9, we have Into the SpiderVerse 2. With the original Into the Spider-Verse being one of the best superhero movies ever made, in my humble opinion, we absolutely can't wait to see what happens next in this long-awaited sequel. With how many corners of Spider-Man's weird history that the original drew from, and with how interested Sony seems to be in connecting their various Spider-Man films, it seems like a solid prediction that there will at least be some cameos related to either Tom Holland or other MCU-related actors or characters, and I just can't wait to see what surprises are in store from the characters that taught us how anyone can really be Spider-Man. Coming in at number 8, we have our first proper MCU entry with the Disney Plus show Secret Invasion. Based on the comic book event of the same name, in which a large amount of Skrulls had infiltrated Earth's mightiest heroes and various government agencies, this miniseries will focus on Nick Fury and the Skrull Talos as they seek to uncover a Skrull conspiracy. Finally getting to see Nick Fury in a starring role after years of just being a supporting character in the MCU is definitely exciting, but the biggest appeal of this series for me is getting to see the political thriller elements of the MCU on display again, but this time with shape-shifting aliens involved as well. Don't you just love comic book weirdness?
Number 7. Mephisto. Mephisto has also been considered a huge threat during this time. We don't know what exactly he's been planning, but we do know that Moon Knight and Khonshu consider him to be a big threat. And Ghost Rider Johnny Blaze was also in pursuit of him near the beginning of the Empire event, but instead of wanting him gone, he just wanted some answers from him. For those who haven't been keeping up with Ghost Rider, something else you need to know going into Empire is that Johnny Blaze has currently taken over as the King of Hell, and is sporting some pretty sweet horns currently as a result. Later it's revealed that Moon Knight, who has been taking weapons, items, and powers from his fellow heroes, has been doing so in an effort to go after a great threat, later revealed to be at least in part Mephisto, because Khonshu has urged him to do so. In fact, it's implied Khonshu seems to want to take Mephisto's place potentially in some way. What we still don't know is what Mephisto or Khonshu have been plotting, and if there are still more threats that Moon Knight plans on neutralizing.
Coming in at number 6, we have Ms. Marvel. Kamala Khan has become a fan favorite Avengers character over the last few years as a fangirl of the Earth's mightiest heroes that winds up gaining her own size-changing powers and becomes a homegrown superhero of her own. After thoroughly enjoying Ms. Marvel's role as a lead in the Avengers video game that released last year, I can't wait to see this character explored more in depth on screen and building up to the 2023 MCU film The Marvels, in which Kamala Khan will finally get to team up with her idol and inspiration, Carol Danvers.
Number 5. Time Runs Out. Time Runs Out is an event that bridged the gap between Infinity and Secret Wars. The Illuminati already know that the incursions are on their way, and this event sees them and different heroes attempt to tackle this issue head on. Everyone has their own approach. Some heroes plan to destroy any other universes on a collision course with theirs, others look for a way to prevent the incursions happening altogether, not wanting to, destroy other universes, and even still, some are forced to prepare for what seems to be, basically at this point, inevitable. In the midst of all this, Captain America and Iron Man are also on opposite sides once again, with Cap and the Avengers fighting against Iron Man and the Illuminati. And as if the Illuminati wasn't radical enough in their attempts to deal with the incursions, Namor also splinters off from the group to create his own, even more extreme group known as the Cabal, who are willing to do whatever it takes to stop the incursions.
Coming in at number 4, we have the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. Now, the third Guardians of the Galaxy movie has had a long road to being made, with James Gunn being briefly let go from the project and getting to make the Suicide Squad before eventually being rehired. But before we get to a proper full-length reunion for the Guardians in 2023 with Volume 3, 2022 will be bringing us the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, apparently inspired by the infamous Star Wars special of old and being filmed on the same sets as Volume 3. If there's anybody that can teach us the true meaning of Christmas in 2022, it's gotta be Rocket Raccoon, right?
Number 3. Avengers vs. Fantastic Four. Well, not so much versus, I guess. These two aren't really fighting one another directly, but we do learn in Empire number 1 that both of these different teams have different approaches when it comes to what they consider the best move is here for how to handle all the chaos that is coming at them in this Empire event. Fantastic Four take a more diplomatic approach, trying to negotiate initially, while Avengers are gearing up to smash things with some of those sweet hammers we just talked about. Smash.
Coming in at number 2, we have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. When it comes to movies that have already been built up in the MCU, the Doctor Strange sequel just might have the most hype going for it. We'll have the return of Wanda Maximoff after the stunning events of WandaVision, and the continuation of Strange's adventures in the multiverse following his contribution to the events of Spider-Man: No Way Home. Add the fact that this film is being directed by the one and only Sam Raimi, the mastermind behind the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films, and this movie seems destined to deliver some of his wild horror as we continue to explore the Marvel multiverse. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Thor: Love and Thunder, the 4th Thor movie overall, and the incredibly anticipated sequel to Thor: Ragnarok. Featuring the return of that film's iconic director, Taika Waititi, and also featuring Natalie Portman getting to return as Jane Foster's incarnation of Thor, and this movie seems poised to even outdo its much-beloved predecessor. Add the incredibly talented Christian Bale as Gore the God Butcher, on top of cameo appearances by all of the Guardians of the Galaxy following Thor's adventures with them post-Endgame, and Thor: Love and Thunder is my most anticipated MCU film of 2022.
Number 10. The Machine. Well, this is technically a big moment and revelation from the Eternals series by Kieran Gillen that precedes the AXE event. Some of you may not have been reading Eternals, so I figured it was still an important one to include here because it's really relevant and really cool. But also, go read the latest Eternals series because it is amazing, and honestly it's too short-lived for how awesome it was. You should go read it. I wish Kieran Gillen could just keep writing Eternals for, I don't know, into the foreseeable future. But I gotta say, I am happy that we have him on Immortal X-Men, and if we gotta have one or the other, I get it, but Eternals was so good. In Eternals, we learned about how the Machine actually has its own personality and its own voice. The Machine being the thing that actually resurrects the Eternals every time they die. And honestly, I think it has become one of my favorite characters in the Eternals series. Machine is so cool and so sassy sometimes. In AXE, the Machine serves as a kind of narrator at times, which is also really fun and super cool. Honestly, you could just read this event just for that narration and likely be pretty content with it. That's how good the narration is. While Neil Gaiman and John Romita Jr. actually created the Machine in Volume 3 of the Eternals, Gillen actually helped give it an amazing voice and characterization in his 5th volume of that series. Number 9. Eternals vs. Mutants. This really isn't just about Eternals even versus X-Men. This conflict extends way beyond that, as we learn in AXE Eve of Judgment issue number 1. Here it's revealed that Prime Eternal Druig has an agenda against all mutants. It turns out he wants to kill them all. Why? Well, because he claims the mutants are actually deviants. That is, that they have grown to reach beyond what they should. They have deviated excessively, which is, after all, what Eternals are meant to fight against as one of their own prime directives. Druig, however, doesn't really care as much about killing mutants, deviants, as he does about cementing his own position as Eternal Prime. The Machine was really hoping that Druig would be content to have simply achieved this title, which happened, by the way, in the Eternal series. If you're wondering where you can find that story, like I said, you should read it. But alas, Druig is too paranoid to feel secure and content and wants some accolades to add to his name, so he can be like the greatest Prime Eternal ever, which he could get if he destroyed the mutants in the name of what the Eternals are meant to stand for, eliminating deviants. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerdy, you should go check out our new channel, Most Amazing Top 10 Anime. It is really cool, and we want you to go and give all the anime manga love that you have over to the channel. And over to James. Say hi to James while you're over there. Number 8. The Secret of the Eternals' Resurrection. This is another thing that, like the Machine's quirky personality, was actually covered in the Eternals series. However, for those of you who haven't gotten there yet, this is also covered in Judgment Day, more specifically being recapped in AXE Eve of Judgment, so you can, be in on the secret, because it's pretty integral to what's happening here with the Eternals. And so for some, this is probably a pretty big revelation, because like I said, I don't think everyone that's reading this event has read Eternals. What we learn here is that the Machine actually resurrects mutants by sacrificing a human life from Earth to do so. This is the reason that Phastos is actually imprisoned, kinda. He attempted to destroy the Machine upon learning of this revelation, but he didn't realize that the Machine is actually intrinsically tied to the Earth. In fact, it is the Earth. So destroying the Machine actually means destroying the world. But initially, Phastos thought it would actually be a solution for Eternals' immortality and actually save a ton of human lives that would, be sacrificed to resurrect Eternals whenever they fell. Icarus also must live with this revelation, as must the rest of the Eternals, and for Icarus it's especially difficult, as his interpretation of one of their prime directives to protect the Machine was that this also meant protecting the humans of Earth. So you can see his contradictory dilemma, because to keep the Machine going means you're gonna have to kill some humans. It's not great. Number 7. Daredevil's Secret Identity. Daredevil's secret identity is back under wraps, and if you're wondering how all this happened because you remember him literally admitting to being Daredevil, it went down in the Purple story arc of Charles Soule's 2016 run on Daredevil. Here, Daredevil attempts to help the Purple children, Kilgrave's kids, who when joined together turn purple and get their father's powers. Some of the children are being held prisoner so that the Purple Man can harness their power to use for himself, making him impossibly strong to face. Daredevil, who normally has the willpower to resist the Purple Man's commands, actually finds himself unable to, as he struggles with his own identity and his sense of self. In the end, Daredevil is able to find himself and defeat Kilgrave in the process, and the Purple children, feeling bad for DD, who admitted in a court of law and is known the world over as then former attorney Matt Murdock, decide to use their power to help him, making everyone forget that Matt and Daredevil are one and the same person, and giving Matt back his secret identity. And when I say everyone, that includes Wilson Fisk, which is a major part of the reason that Fisk is so obsessed with Daredevil currently. He wants to know who he is, desperately seeking to unmask and destroy him, which sounds disturbingly familiar to past events, which didn't end well for Matt last time. Number 6. Icarus makes a deal. But not just any deal. Icarus talks to Jean Grey, and in so doing decides that he will help Jean with Druig's invasion of Krakoa. To defeat the Hex, the mutants must venture to where they're being transported to Earth from, but there are a few problems. 1. Only Eternals can actually enter that area, and 2. Uranos, one of the most deadly Eternals, is currently there, surrounded by an armory of endless weapons. So yeah, might be kinda tricky for even someone as powerful as Jean to deal with that and get out alive. Oh, and while Icarus is willing to help, the deal only stands for him to get the mutants in there even, who need to be ready at a moment's notice to go with him, if Jean can ensure that no Eternals are killed. In typical Icarus fashion, being extremely just to a fault, especially with the revelation about the machine plaguing his conscience. If any Eternals are killed, the deal will be off. Number 5. Janine is back. Not only has Ben returned, but he's also got his very own version of MJ, who is joining him along for the ride. We also get to see the return of Janine Godby in the final story of issue 74 of ASM, the lead into the Beyond event. Now for those who don't remember Janine, she was actually Ben's love interest back in the 1990s, and we haven't really seen her since then. She was on the run after she was severely mistreated by her father and basically killed him in self-defense. Her real name is Elizabeth Tyne, but she chose to change it to Janine Godby, because, you know, she on the run. And she still actually goes by Janine now, preferring it to her given name, probably because she associates that with a lot of trauma. Janine eventually felt that she needed to confront her past and accept the responsibility of her actions after listening to a speech that Ben gave to Kane about doing, well, just that. As a result, Janine turned herself in and confessed to killing her father. She ended up in prison and has been there till, well, now, when Beyond was able to make a deal to have her put in their care instead. During Beyond, she has mostly been confined to her and Ben's apartment, as she is still a criminal serving time. Nicer surroundings for sure, but she still acknowledges that she's pretty much just imprisoned. However, after developing her own suspicions and secretly being given the important Beyond drive from Ben, who then goes missing, the time comes for Janine to break out. Number 4. Iska the Unbeaten changes sides. In X-Men Red issue number 5, we learn of what happens to Arakko. This issue, by the way, is crazy, it's so good. We know from the main Judgment Day series that Arakko was attacked by Uranos, and presumably hit pretty hard by them. And if you're thinking, ha, I mean, it's Arakko, how bad can it be? The answer is really freaking bad. Uranos is released from his cell by Druig for exactly 1 hour. Within 20 minutes, he had already put a huge dent in Arakko. Iska herself during the hour is forced to change sides due to her mutant power, which isn't a good sign. Iska's power, for those that don't know, is that she'll always win, but this means that her power has told her that Arakko winning is not possible if she's turning on them. So that's a really bad sign. Good for Iska though, because she actually does win, she survives, she gets to live another day, with Nightcrawler teleporting her away to help Arakko's odds after she turns on them. Nightcrawler's solution is basically like, well, if Iska isn't here, then her power can't like affect the outcome. You know what I mean? Bad for Arakko, as they now have to face Uranos without either Iska or Nightcrawler, and Iska also ended up breaking the Great Ring of Arakko when she killed Idil, one of her fellow council members. The really bad part with all of this though is that Uranos is successful and kills almost everyone on Arakko. And Arakko in X-Men Red was revealed to not believe in resurrection. So they have rejected that Krakoan gift, and as such, all of those who died will basically never come back to us. At least these mutants aren't going to come back from mutant resurrection protocols. Number 3. Superior 4. The Superior 4 started as another team of Mayor Fisks, although they quickly evolved into something more aligned with Otto Octavius's own motives. Otto, you see, decided to sign up with Fisk as one of his own superpowered enforcers, simply because, well, he wanted to get his hands on the Baxter building, which the Fantastic Four were forced to abandon when Mayor Fisk's cronies came to seize any and all projects the FF was working on and arrest all the team members. Because, you know, they're illegal superheroes. They initially managed to capture Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman, but their children, the Thing, and the Human Torch all managed to get away. In their place, Otto decided to create his own version of the team, scouring the multiverse for alternate versions of him, who also happen to be alternate versions of the FF's backup roster. So now we have the Superior 4 led by 616 Otto, and featuring Otto versions of Wolverine, Ghost Rider, and, you guessed it, the Hulk. Pretty great. Number 2. Recipe for a god. One group of the Eternals has a plan to defeat Druig by creating a god. They kidnap evil geneticist Mr. Sinister, who currently is a little less evil, working with the mutants instead of against them, of course, on Krakoa. With his and the Avengers' help, using their headquarters, which is the body of a dead Celestial, they set out to make their plan happen. The good news is they succeed, rewriting the programming of the Celestial to make it more aligned with their own beliefs and principles when it awakens. The bad news is the progenitor, which is the name of the Celestial, comes back to life only to inform our heroes that in 24 hours everyone on Earth will also be judged, as they feel those living there have caused so much harm that they too should perhaps be destroyed. They have till then to convince the progenitor that their first impression of Earth and of everyone on it is incorrect. Number 1. Mutants equals deviants? So the funny thing is that Druig, while sort of fabricating a connection between deviants and mutants with dramatic interpretation of excess deviation, actually may have been onto something. When the Celestial comes online and threatens the world, the Quiet Council must decide what to do and possibly take action. However, as they are talking about using some potential secret weapons, Emma Frost reveals she has one of her own. She has made an alliance with the Deviants, who head to Krakoa to help in the fight against the Eternals. The hilarious and amazing part is when Crow reveals to Cyclops that Deviants can use mutant gates, likely thanks to their genetics being so similar to mutants. So perhaps mutants are deviants after all.